Right, good morning, everybody. It's great to see so many people here. Clearly a really important topic with lots of interest, which is great to see. A very warm welcome from Rewilding Europe and the Endangered Landscapes and Seascapes programme to this webinar to launch practical guidance on how to live well with wildlife. So my name is Nancy Ockendon. I am the Science Manager for the Endangered Landscapes and Seascapes programme, and I will be chairing the session today. Just to start off with a bit of housekeeping, we're going to hear a series of presentations from 5 brilliant speakers, and then all the speakers will come together in a Q&A and panel discussion at the end. And this will be your opportunity to ask questions to all of the speakers. So we'd ask that if you have questions for the speakers, please could you use the Q&A box to submit them as we go through the session. And please do use the Q&A box rather than the chat function. That's where we'll be drawing the questions from. But please do put them in as the speakers are presenting. One other thing to note, because we've got such a lot of people attending, which is really fantastic, it would be really helpful if you can read the questions that have already been submitted. And if there's a question you'd like to hear read out, please could you upvote it? And that'll really help us to ensure that we're prioritising asking the questions that most people are interested to hear. So I just thought I'd start by giving you an overview of the fantastic lineup of speakers we're going to be hearing from. So I'm going to kick off and give a brief introduction on behalf of the ELSP. I'll then hand over to Amy Duthie of Rewilding Europe, who's been leading this piece of work. We'll then move on and hear from Svetlana Tesic, who will be talking about the role of mayors in leading social change. And then Mario Cipollone from Rewilding Apennines will be describing a practical case study working with bear smart communities in central Italy. Our fourth speaker is Francesco Romito, who's representing a grassroots community organisation advocating for the protection of wolves in Italy. And finally, we'll hear from Miroslav Kutal, who will talk about working with volunteers to conserve large carnivores in the Czech Republic. So we've organised this webinar to publicise the launch of this new practical guidance, which is aimed at municipalities, local authorities, and practitioners working on the ground to help people and wildlife to thrive alongside each other. And this is work that's been led by Rewilding Europe and supported by the ELSP through one of our Advancing Restoration Knowledge grants. And these are aiming to overcome practical barriers to the recovery of landscapes and seascapes across Europe. So I'm just going to give a really short introduction to the ELSP and talk a bit about why we've been so pleased to support this work. So the ELSP was founded in 2018 with the aim of restoring biodiversity and natural processes at scale across Europe. So the real focus of the programme is supporting projects that are working over large areas to restore functioning ecosystems that are resilient and self-sustaining in the long term. And we absolutely recognise that people are fundamental to the success of these projects. It's really critical that the people who are living in, who are working in, who are spending time in these landscapes are part of and are benefiting from the recovery of nature. So here you can see the 21 landscape and seascape restoration projects that the ELSP has supported. And you can see there's a really wide range of geographies and also a real diversity of habitats and socio-economic contexts that they're working across. Many of the projects we're working with are working in areas where there's been substantial rural depopulation and people, particularly young people, have left towns and villages. And at the same time, we've got changes in habitat and reductions in threats and pressures that are allowing species like wolf, bear, large herbivores to return to areas where they haven't been seen for decades or sometimes even centuries. And this can lead to challenges if during these time periods, communities have lost their knowledge of how to sort of successfully coexist with these animals. But I think we really believe that the return of these animals is also providing a really great opportunity and if local people are supported to ensure that they're ready and equipped to manage the return of these animals, they can coexist together. And actually, even more than that, it's a real opportunity to revitalise these communities and bring back employment and income, but also a real pride in and connection to the natural landscape. I thought I'd just give a couple of examples of landscapes that we've worked with that have been successfully working to ensure people and animals can live side by side. So first of all, going up to a project we've worked with in the Highlands of Scotland, where Cairngorms Connect is working to restore native woodland, peatlands, and also restore rivers to allow them to show more natural flood dynamics. And as part of this, they've been working to bring back the beaver. And in Scotland, as in many other parts of Europe, the ideas of beavers returning to the landscape was met really positively by some groups, but other groups, so for example, farmers, foresters, fishing communities, were concerned, or in some cases even quite angry about this idea. So the project spent a lot of time talking to these different groups to really try to understand their concerns, raising awareness and understanding. So, for example, talking to the fishing community that beavers are vegetarian and don't eat fish, and also putting in really practical mitigation issues where that's appropriate. And since then, they have released the beavers into the landscape, and the response has been really positive so far, with improvements to habitat from the beavers, and also hopefully potential reductions in future flood risks from their impacts on the environment. And just to give one other example, going a bit further east to Romania, we worked with the Foundation Conservation Carpathia, and they're working in a landscape which still contains a really great diversity and abundance of wildlife. But this has sometimes had negative impacts on local people, so for example, farmers and orchard owners. And in this context, because of the relatively high potential for interactions and even conflict between local communities and large animals, FCC have created a rapid response team, and that team's available 24/7 to detect and respond to reports of animals, particularly bears, coming into communities. And the team come in and manage the situation and scare the bears off. They've also set up a really simple, efficient compensation scheme for any losses that take place. And they're also supporting with the provision of mitigation measures, such as livestock guarding dogs and electric fences. And all the while, this really impressive range of charismatic species is allowing them to rebuild a really strong local economy around ecotourism. So I hope these kind of couple of examples show that when the different groups of people that are involved and affected work in a really meaningful way together, it's possible to find really positive solutions to the return of wildlife to these landscapes. So I'm really excited that today we're able to share with you this new guidance that's been produced by Rewilding Europe to enable best practice in living well with wildlife. So we're now going to go into the speakers. As I said at the start, please do submit any questions you'd like to ask via the Q&A box as we go through the presentations. But I'm delighted to now be able to hand over to our first speaker, Amy Duthie from Rewilding Europe, who's going to introduce the guidance.
Thank you, Nancy. So I hope you can all see my screen.
Looks great.
Fantastic. So I'm Amy Duthie. I work at Rewilding Europe as the head of Upscaling. And for the past 18 months or so, we've been working really hard with people from across Europe and beyond to develop these guidelines. And we're really excited to be able to share them with you today. I'm very grateful that so many people have taken the time to join us. Thank you so much for coming. As many people, I think, know, particularly the type of people who will be on this call with us today, wildlife species are returning across Europe. And this is a really huge conservation success and something that we should feel enormously proud of. We have such a background of loss and biodiversity decline globally that having the return of some really iconic species to Europe is something that's a real cause for celebration. You know, vultures are coming back, beavers, wolves, they're all finding their way to places where they haven't been seen for decades or even centuries, like Nancy said. And sometimes they're going to areas where they've never been before because climate change has made new areas viable for them. So while this is a huge success, it's also something that really comes with challenges as well. People in Europe aren't used to living with wildlife anymore, particularly not with large mammals, for example. And people are coming to us, to, I'm sure, many of the speakers, and certainly to Rewilding Europe, asking for guidance on what it is they should do. Rewilding Europe explicitly wants there to be more wilder nature in Europe. It's our ambition, it's our motivation. We want there to be more natural processes, more wilder nature, more animals, more abundance. We're working to show how that can be done in 11 flagship landscapes, and we're lucky to have Mario with us today, who leads our landscape in Italy. We work very closely with local partners, and we want to show how people and wildlife can live together well and go beyond coexistence, but actually thrive together and benefit from each other's presence. But we also know that to do that takes real effort, it takes work, and it takes commitment from many different people in those communities. And although wildlife comeback is happening across Europe, people feel that experience in their particular community, in their local place. The experience of living with beavers or wolves or bears or any of these other species happens in your street or in your field or in the woods near your home. It's a very personal thing to each place and each individual context. Yet the schemes which already exist to help people live well with wildlife often are operated at national level. That can make it very hard for local people to know about them or to access them. Often they're species specific, particularly if there's an endangered species, for example. That's not necessarily helpful, or it can be a very heavy administrative burden if you're trying to access support in an area with a lot of different species there. The schemes are also often stakeholder specific. For example, if you're a farmer and you want to take prevention measures to protect your assets and your herds from animals, you might be able to access some grant support or some financing to help with that. But that's not reaching other members of the community who might now be fearful to go to an area or have a negative response or an emotion in a less tangible way. So we saw a real need to help communities to really take control of their own situation and work together in a way that helps them to respond to the unique situation in their place, and really change it and transform it into something much more positive. The two key components of that are accessible guidance, which is what we've been working on developing, and local leadership. Anyone can be a leader on this topic, but it's also true to say that some people have a leadership role already, which is absolutely vital in helping communities respond and live well with wildlife. It's why we wanted to partner with the mayors of Europe, and we're very happy that Svetlana is here with us today as well, because mayors, municipality staff, and others with these formal positions, they have the mandate and the skill and the opportunity to create dialogue, to build trust, and to help their community develop in a way that takes advantage and benefits from the return of wildlife. So on the guidance, what did we do? Well, we started with the existing guidance. There's some really fantastic examples already out there at the global scale. We looked at the IUCN guidelines, we looked at the WWF ones, we looked at a lot of examples from outside of Europe as well, because in Africa, Asia, the Americas, there's a whole wealth of experience of living, particularly with large mammals, that we can really learn from here in Europe. We also then looked inside Europe at the pioneers who were already taking a community-based approach to living well with wildlife. And here we have Mario, for example, as well as Francesco and Miroslav, all of whom know about this in great detail and will tell you in the next presentations. We looked at all of these different community-based approaches, and we thought about what it is exactly they're doing. We wanted to see if there were commonalities that were true across the whole of Europe. And we structured our findings according to the curve of conflict. I imagine many of you are familiar with this already, but it basically is a curve which describes how conflicts emerge and happen and how they are resolved afterwards. You have a phase at the start where there is latent conflict. People disagree on an issue, but you might not know because there's never been a situation that caused those opinions to come to the front. Then there's an incident. It could involve wildlife. And those opinions are voiced. People feel strongly. There can be disagreements and arguments. And then you need dialogue and you need mediation to resolve this situation and hopefully grow back stronger than you were before this incident happened. We've structured our guidance following that curve with a real emphasis on prevention, because of course we don't want there to be any conflict in the first place. We want there to be effort put into the prevention stage so that people are living well together, well with wildlife, and that neither the wildlife or the people or their assets suffer any harm. Things do happen, so we're also looking at what to do in a response situation. People know what to do if there's a car crash, for example. They might not know what to do if wildlife are involved in an incident of harm, particularly if that wildlife are returning to the area after a long absence. And then thinking about afterwards, of course, we want to think about how can we improve the situation to avoid anything happening again in future. Ahead of this curve, though, there's an extra stage, which is preparation. Wildlife is spontaneously returned to many areas, but it doesn't arrive there magically overnight. You might know that there are new animals moving into the area, new trends. There are things that can be done to prepare and actually get on the front foot and see the opportunity and take that opportunity. Celebrate the cultural connection of the wildlife in your place. Find an economic opportunity and gain from that presence, which can really then help avoid any conflict situations from occurring. And some of these things are cross-cutting. They're true throughout. That celebration of wildlife and culture, the economic opportunities, the change in social mindset to one which celebrates wildlife rather than fearing it is something that is true throughout this whole process. And these are really the areas where we wanted to put the emphasis in our guidelines. We met together in the Central Apennines last year. We brought together experts from 8 different countries who looked at a draft of our guidelines. And I think it's fair to say they pulled it to pieces, they put it in a new order, they changed all the words. But we were really, really happy to know that we had something that rang true for people from Portugal to Bulgaria, to Italy, to Poland. So we really felt that there were some European-wide approaches that did make sense and that we could give this guidance on. And that's what now is in our guidance that we're launching today. The guidance itself contains 4 sequential sections: preparation, prevention, response, and afterwards, following that curve of conflict, as I mentioned. Then we have the cross-cutting themes: dialogue, communications, building social attitudes, developing the economic opportunities. Then we have a set of practical resources, the prevention measures you can take to prevent harm by particular species, if that's what's relevant in your context, the compensation schemes which are already available, particularly in EU member states, but also in other countries too, and case studies of where people are already taking this opportunity to show what is possible. And I think what's important to say is that this is guidance, but it's not guidance in theory. This is guidance about how to complete a set of workbooks. And those workbooks build upon each other to help you develop very practical plans and actions to help your community live well with wildlife. The workbooks themselves, again, follow this same structure. In the preparation phase, it's about prioritizing the species in your area. Which ones are really significant here? Which ones are causing concern or have the potential to? Which ones are really important for your community? And then thinking in your community, who is vulnerable and what are they vulnerable to? Who decides that vulnerability? And then moving on to prevention. How can you improve habitat elsewhere to attract wildlife away and provide more space for them so there's no need for them to come near a human settlement? And how can you improve your own area, your own town or village or community to discourage interactions from happening? These can be very simple things like bins that bears can't get into. It can be allowing more forest or cover regeneration away from the town so that there's more cover and more shelter for the wildlife. Then thinking ahead, what are you going to do if a harmful incident does occur? And then even more practically, who's going to oversee these plans? Who's going to deliver them? Who's going to pay? And where will that money come from? So these workbooks really guide you through this so that you end up with a practical operational plan with roles, responsibilities, and a budget. And then all of this requires people to want to engage with you on this topic. So there's also a really important section on leading social change. This is about helping people think in a new way about their relationship with wildlife, seeing it as an opportunity, seeing themselves as part of nature and making space for nature to be there with us. So I really want to emphasize everywhere is unique. The approach to creating a community that can live well with wildlife is replicable. The actions and opportunities that are relevant to your community will be absolutely unique to you. And that's what's fantastic about this approach, is that we can follow the same good practice, we can learn from each other, but we can also deeply engage with our own place and celebrate what makes it special. So these guidelines launched today, as Nancy mentioned, we'll be sending the links around after this webinar with recordings, different resources, but this is where you can find more information right now. We also know we have a lot to learn. We would love to have your feedback. I could see that there are people here from all over the world. I saw Peru, I saw Ethiopia, India, China, as well as all across Europe. If you have feedback, if you have examples that you'd like to share, please do contact us. The email address is training@rewildingeurope.com. Thank you again for your time.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Amy. It's really great to hear it laid out like that and really see how practical this guidance is. Yeah, you put a lot of emphasis on the importance of leading social change. So next, I'm really pleased to be able to hand over to Svetlana, who is a co-founder of the Mayors of Europe, and will talk about the role of mayors in leading social change.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Amy. Thank you to the whole hosting team for inviting me today. I'm very happy to contribute to this initiative, not only professionally, but also personally, because I believe coexistence is not a choice, but it's the only way forward. So I work with mayors. I am a co-founder of Alliance of European Mayors, which is a Brussels-based nonprofit organization who works with cities and municipalities across Europe as a continent, not just European Union. So I work with mayors and local leaders across Europe in cities, towns, small municipalities. And what I'll try to bring today into this conversation is a perspective which is a governance one, because coexistence with wildlife doesn't succeed or fail if in strategies or reports. It succeeds or fails in everyday life, where people feel fear, uncertainty, and where mayors are expected, or the local leadership are expected to respond to those feelings. So because mayors are the closest democratic leaders to the citizens and all of us living in communities, they often don't work only with abstract policies or drafts or creating strategies. They work with the neighbors, parents, farmers, teachers, and business owners. So when wildlife returns, it often arrives faster than social acceptance does. And these first reactions are rarely rational. They're mostly emotional. What mayors manage in those moments is not wildlife, they're managing trust. If people trust local leadership and their actions, then there's far more open understanding for dialogue, for learning, for adapting, how to live together with nature alongside. If not, then fear quickly turns into opposition. So from what I see across Europe, coexistence is really a technical problem. It is, of course, a social one. People ask very basic questions. Is it my family safe? Who is responsible if something happened? Am I being heard with my concerns? If those questions are ignored, no amount of scientific evidence will ever help this topic becoming a harmony. So this is where mayors play a critical role, not as experts, of course, but as translators between knowledge, policy, and lived experience on a daily basis. In practice, mayors lead coexistence in three ways. First, they translate, they explain what coexistence actually means in daily life, how that can affect the everyday life and activities. They make space for questions, concerns, debates, and also disagreement, which is important. So Second, they convene. Successful examples always involve local coalitions, municipalities, NGOs, schools, farmers, and local businesses that I'm sure we're going to see through the successful examples that Mario will share us later from Italy. And third, mayors also need to protect their social cohesion. So the most damaging framing might be nature versus people. Mayors who succeed in these topics actively are actually avoiding any kind of polarization in this matter between people and nature. What we see working across municipalities in the places that manage this, so to say, the best, although we cannot qualify that as best practices, but are successful, they have a few things in common. First of all, they communicate early and consistently, not only during incidents. They involve young people, if there are such in the communities, as we heard that usually in those areas might be depopulated with this demographic part. But anyway, through schools and local initiatives, because learning is the strongest asset and tool in this agenda, and the accept and coexistence, they actually drive this narrative and learn and know from the beginning the coexistence is not a deal to be done. It is a process and it needs its time. And also perfection here doesn't work. The honesty and consistency are values which are required from the local leadership to being devoted to this topic. So guides like this is valuable because it respects the reality mayors are facing on a daily basis: limited time, resources, of course, high emotions, and complex local dynamics. It doesn't actually ask mayors to become experts. It helps them lead responsibly. And if we want people to live well with the wildlife, we must support those who are closest to the communities and respect this, actually leverage this proximity and use it as an asset. A few examples from Nordics context that illustrate clearly the city of Trondheim in Norway. Wild Atlantic salmon returned to the Nidelva River, running through the city after decades of decline. So municipal control over wastewater management, river management, and enforcement made salmon recovery possible. And these were city-level strong decisions, not just some abstract policies. We all know how salmon is important for Scandinavians. Another one, Lake Saima in Finland. Saima ringed seal is one of the world's rarest seals and has survived and stabilized in Finnish lakeland. So municipalities implemented and upheld fishing restrictions, worked with local communities, and carried this political responsibility for protection measures that directly affect to the results of this. So those are just some few examples from the part which maybe not will be represented through the examples here, but strongly demonstrate when decisions being implemented from local municipalities and leaders already have an impact and can be a role model how to continue with this.
Thank you, Svetlana, so much. I think it's so critical to have engagement of local leaders and, as you say, such a vital link to the communities, really understanding local contexts and those complex relationships. So it's really great to have you presenting today and giving that perspective of how you can really contribute.
Thank you.
It's great to see questions going into the Q&A box. As I say, please continue to add them and also upvote questions you'd like to hear read out. So we are now going across to the Apennines in central Italy, and we're going to hear from Mario of the Rewilding Apennines team.
Hello, I hope you can hear me. And just a second, I think I have to reshare this presentation. Sorry. And now, here we go. So, I will describe our work in the Central Apennines, and the Central Apennines are called the wild heart of Italy. It's one of the biodiversity hotspots in Europe, and the biodiversity of this landscape is made by this topographic complexity and ecosystem diversity. You can see we have quite a lot of prey, predators, and the whole circle of life is completed by scavengers, even though at the moment only griffon vultures are present in the landscape. It hosts quite a lot of human settlements, probably not too many people because there is this land abandonment, the population going on, but human settlements are quite widespread. And so it's very important to invest a lot of energy on so-called ecological and coexistence corridors, so suitable lands which enables animals to move across them, connecting protected areas. So they are pathways that allow animals to move between crucial habitats and also exchange genes between different populations. The coexistence corridors actually make essential to create the right conditions for people and wildlife to live in balance. And in 2015, Rewilding Apennines and Salviamo l'Orso actually started this benchmark community approach in Italy, and actually was taken from the North American experience. And so it happened that in 2014, a bear was illegally shot in Pettorano sul Gizio, so a tragedy which triggered a strong reaction by the organizations Salviamo l'Orso and Rewilding Apennines, and thanks to a small grant from IBA, this International Association for Bear Research and Management, we could afford buying some electric fencing and start reducing damage and also the perception of risk. So it was quite hard work, and in 2019, two new benchmark communities were established following the same approach, the same scheme. In 2021, we were partners. We started this life benchmark corridors in a strong partnership with other 10 partners and 13 new benchmark communities in Italy have been established. I give you some numbers, and you can see the case of Pettorano sul Gizio in 10 years, so 2015 when the benchmark community started to date, we were able to reduce damage, actually annihilate damage, I would say, while the number of bears apparently increased. Especially in the last year, we reported 15 bears. And the number of fences more or less is the same, or so-called damage prevention devices. So this could be possible also thanks to the contribution of the municipality of Pettorano sul Gizio and the local Monte Genzana Alto Gizio Nature Reserve. So benchmark communities are not just a set of best practices, it's a cultural pathway that actually puts participation shared responsibility, safety, tolerance, and local governance at the center. And cannot be imposed, must be built together, should be bottom-up process. And it must emerge from a community of informed and aware people, where every citizen can and must feel like an active participant. So much of large carnivores' lives unfolds in inhabited agriculture and productive landscapes in Europe, because, as I said, it's quite densely, or at least quite a large populated landscape. And this is where the future of the species is decided. Wildlife smart communities do not protect only wildlife, but they strengthen the bond between people and place, and they foster new economies and build a shared vision for the future. And in fact, we also created an enterprise network to support our work over time, also to generate some income that can be reinvested in compensation. So the governance, you see, approach, steps and lessons learned to build effective and efficient wildlife smart communities is adaptive work, adaptive management. You have to learn from your mistakes. And in the case of bears, they are extremely intelligent animals. And so you have to adapt your measures or actions sometimes in reactions to some responses from bears that can find a way to cause a damage. So the governance is based on a technical board and preliminary assessment. So you need to identify a technical board which leads the whole process from the establishment to the development of the bear communities, a deep investigation of the threats to bears and the risks associated with interactions with humans in the area. So it's a risk assessment. And then the BSC, so Bear Smart Community Committee, is the core operational body. The roles bringing stakeholders together, selected on the basis of the risk analysis, the main categories. So in some places could be truffle pickers, in places where you don't have truffles can be hunters, or both, in case you have actually both stakeholders. Then you need to provide information. Setting up an information point or front office in each BSC is ideal, of course, means an investment. Then you need to define the coexistence plan, conflict prevention and mitigation measures. So it's crucial that the committee has political and decision-making power. In Italy, the approach that works is at a municipality level, or at the level of a union of municipalities, so it could be also a cluster of municipalities. In order to be effective and efficient, it's important that the coexistence plan is integrated into municipal planning and land management tools. And well, the coexistence plan, an organization that has the power to incorporate a coexistence plan into land management tools can make it truly effective. It's everyday work, long-term commitment, and definitely you need to make people feel that you are always with them. It's not that today you speak to them, the day after you go away. And so the protection of livestock and apiaries, crop protection, waste management, protection of food sources within towns, because sometimes people don't leave some food that may attract bears. Priority intervention, long-term actions must be planned accordingly with the risk mapping. For each action, a cost estimate must be made. And you need to monitor and evaluate your work. So as I said, is adaptive management. And what we have done so far, we've actually deployed more than 593 to be precise, electric fences, 33 chicken bear resistant hen houses, 57 bear-proof or bear-resistant bins, and 15 times we actually picked up fruit from villages in orchards where actually bears were going, and the people left, in some cases, the fruit there, and then they didn't want to have bears around. So we asked, why don't you pick up the fruit? Some of them were against, let's say, doing that. Maybe some people were too old, and we actually did it with a large group of volunteers, because this is also one of the strengths of our organizations, that we have quite a lot of volunteers every year helping us, and I'm very grateful to them. So challenges ahead, technical, finance, fundraising, and maintenance, because we actually control all these devices. We do, regular checks every year, twice a year, and because we want to make sure that no damage happens, and then people are complaining that devices are not working well. It's actually true the opposite, that sometimes people forget how to use them, or they just don't use them when they don't feel the bear is around. Human resources is another challenge. Benchmark communities and bear monitoring can be fragmented and discontinuous at the social level. Not all communities or municipalities are ever receptive. So a lot of effort and time is needed to get people involved, and sometimes you do a good job in one municipality and the next one, doesn't show the same attention, and so can attract a bear when you are, succeeding in the neighboring community. People's lack of trust in institutions, that's a problem, and sometimes also in NGOs, because they put everything together. Institutions don't work, NGOs are taking money from the people, and these are kind of stereotypes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mario. It's really great to hear about your experiences and all you've learned from it in the Central Apennines. And I think being really aware of the need for, the real long-term commitment to efforts like this, and the need to be adaptable, and also the point about institutional governance, and really thinking about the technical sides as well. So that was really super useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So for our next speaker, we will stay in Italy, and we're going to hear from Francesco Romito, Head of Communications and Vice President of an Italian grassroots community organisation that's advocating for wolf protection and human-wolf coexistence.
Hi, good morning. Tell me if you see my screen. Give me a minute. Okay, you see it? It's
yes.
good. Okay, thank you for the invitation. My name is Francesco Romito, and I represent the Italian NGO called Io non ho paura del lupo. I'm not afraid of the wolf. Sorry, I start my timer. Okay. Today, I would like to talk about the return of the wolf in Italy, not only as a conservation story, but especially as a social one. My goal today is not to provide a solution or instruction, but to think together about the type of approach we are trying to develop. When we talk about wolf, we're also talking about people, local identities, fears, expectation, and the way the communities relate to their landscape. So this presentation has to goal to briefly explain the return of the wolf in Italy and the role of our organization that we are trying to work. This map shows something in some ways exceptional. The return of the wolf in Italy was something very fast. If you compare with our life, with one or two generations of our life. At the beginning, as you can see, the wolf was still widespread, but then persecution, habitat laws, and fair passed the species into a dramatic decline until it survived all in some limited area. One was the area that Mario explained a few minutes ago. What we see later is a gradual recolonization, first on the Apennines area, then expanding north and south, reaching the Alps, the sea area, and today also the Pianura Padana plateau, one of the most populated area in Europe, will have the presence of the wolf. And this is something very important to underline. In Italy, this recolonization happens in an extremely human-shaped environment. Our mountains sometimes are not empty wilderness area, but they are cultural landscape, pastures, roads, farms, villages. This means that this biological recovery of the wolf in few years become something more than a social issues. Today, Italy have the largest wolf population in Europe. Maybe someone don't know this, but it's interesting to say, with approximately 3,500, 4,000 individual. From a conservation perspective, this is a success story and a top predator retard, and tell us that there are the ecological what the wolf need to come back in this area, and also very big prey availability and naturally the legal protection from the past. But I always add the second sentence: this is not a success for everyone. For some people, the wolf is a symbol of biodiversity. For others, is a risk to their work and for their animals. For someone, it's exciting. For other one, is exhausting. So this is where the polarization starts, when a conservation success is experienced from some different ways of our personal feeling. The things can get worse, and naturally do not translate automatically in a social acceptance. Something important to say is that economic and social vulnerabilities existed in Italy long before the wolf returned. Many rural areas, especially marginal mountain areas in Italy, were already living deep transformation, declining incomes, the loss of many services. Fewer people, young people, want to live in some rural areas, and there is a constant feeling of being left behind. And it's important also to say that the wolf did not create these fragilities, but in some ways it revealed them, and sometimes it amplified. Naturally, often what looks like a wolf problem is sometimes a territorial problem. It's about thinking together the future of pastoralism, about the recognition of the service of this small area. And it's important to say that sometimes the wolf can underline all this process that regard our approach. Io non ho paura del lupo, I'm not afraid of the wolf. Our organization was founded 10 years ago in a context of growing tension around the return of the wolf. Our organization was born as a bottom-up initiative. I'm proud to see this, involving people with very different background, people living in rural areas, in the cities, passionate people, farmers. Still today we have one farmer and one ex-farmer inside our board. We have also nature reflection. And our starting point was very, very simple. If you want to reduce conflict, you cannot start by telling people what they should think or what they need to do. We started listening and try to build something like a shared language. One of our principles is that the wolf should belong to communities, not only to scientists or environmentalists, not because science is not important, naturally is essential, but because if people feel the wolf as something in their own, they will develop something more more good for the wolf conservation. Also, our first challenge was to go behind the idea of stakeholders. Naturally, stakeholders are important and are something like categories, but sometimes the communities are something more complex, are just not categories. Sometimes a farmer is not only a farmer, is what I can say, a volunteer firefighter, a father, can be an hunter, a local politician, sometimes a person naturally who love his valley, of his area. And so when we say communities are the landscape, we mean the landscape is in some ways made of relations, and the conflict in some way is also a relation. So the return of the wolf mean that we need to reintroduce this complexity into human-nature relations. If I say reintroducing is something that made me low, but it's something it's important to say. Our second challenge is to act as a bridge between science and society. Scientific knowledge is essential, but information alone sometimes is not often enough. Attempts sometimes is built on trust, not just on data. So our method was listen first, then translate science and try to build together local solution. Translating science means turning data into meaning for the local communities. We cannot say, here is the paper, you need to read it, but sometimes we try to say, this is what your pastor need, this is something your dog need, something also that can be translated in some emotional way. So in some way we try to be a bit more pragmatic. Naturally, we need to keep in mind that the solutions are not the same for everyone or for everything, and we try to find the one that fits in the local culture. It's important to say that we try to work on a national scale in sometimes very different areas, also for the money that the institution can put on some activities. So it's important to say that sometimes we don't just need to communicate science, but we try to transform the science to meet the need of everyday life. So what we actually do, I just selected two projects. First of all, communication. You have seen that the many areas of Italy are experiencing a suddenly comeback of the wolf, and we try to use storytelling to make this complexity understandable, not propaganda. Storytelling as a way to hold multiple truths about the same times. And second one, we try to work on conflict reduction and community participation. There are many other activities. The field monitoring. We monitor the presence of the wolf, and sometimes we put a bit of activism, which is something that we like a lot, not as ideology, but as advocacy for evidence-based decision, legality, and responsible coexistence. Another project that we like a lot, just to give you another example, are the warning sign for livestock guardian dogs, which is a concrete example of our conflict reduction. Livestock guardian dogs are often an effective tool, but in Italy we have a great deal of fragmentation with hundreds of different versions of these signs that help the hikers and the people that frequent the rural areas to understand that there are working dogs. And the aim of the project is very big, is to have a single version of a national scale. Warning signs are very, very important. They try to reduce accident and help people to understand how to behave in presence of this dog. We are very proud of this project. We donated a lot. Also, we have partners Also Rewilding Apennines and Salviamo l'Orso are partners inside the project. So we are working hard to develop this project. Last one is our communication dissemination project, Honoring the Wolf. We organize public events, we distribute material, we work online and offline. Many areas, as I say, the wolf arrived after decades of absence. Our role is to rebuild a shared baseline with information. And again, the objective, the target is not to tell the people to like the wolf. The aim is to give to these people instruments, less emotional, less sensational as what they find inside the newspaper, to understand better the complexity of this comeback and to try these people to build their own opinion on the wolf. For this year, for the 2026, we are investing more in participatory project, both in the Alpine area and in the Apennines. Participatory works means creating space where people meet outside the social media logic, which for large carnivores something very, very, very worst here in Italy, but in many parts of Europe. And we want to create a place where farmers, hikers, technicians, citizens can talk, disagree, and still understand that they are part of the same community, also if they think on sometimes the opposite about the wolf conservation. It's a slow project, but sometimes it's less spectacular, but in the long term, we think we can change the way that this community can act when we are talking about the wolf and the large carnivore comeback. Just to close the presentation, it's important to say that the wolf forces us to rethink what living in nature means for our people. And because the wolf is not just a biological issue, it's a social signal in some ways. And also it's important to say that when we talk about shared landscape, we are not romanticizing coexistence. Shared do not mean easy also. Our objective in some ways is to shift from problem species to shared species. It's not just an ecological, it's a social issue. And in this sense, the wolf is not asking us to stay on one side or on another side. Is probably asking us to grow as a society, and especially if we want to have a wide view in the way we relate to nature. So technical tools such as fence, dogs, compensation, scans, monitoring are naturally essential. However, they only work when embedded in trust is dialogue and shared responsibility. So I want to close with this quote: the most effective tool in our view is not just a fence, it's a community. I say thank you to everyone. Naturally, I was very fast, also I gone beyond my 10 minutes, and if you want to discover more about what we do as Io Non Ho Paura del Lupo, you can visit our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesco. Brilliant. And yeah, you're so right about the importance of social dimensions and trust. It's absolutely fundamental to all these conversations. So we will move on to our final speaker, Miroslav, who represents the large carnivore conservation program of Friends of the Earth in the Czech Republic. And they're working with volunteers to conserve large carnivores. And Miroslav is the scientific advisor on the Carnivore Tracking Project. Over to you, Miroslav.
Thank you very much. So thank you for invitation for this important webinar. I will start with a short introduction about our situation in the Czech Republic. Yeah, it's moving. Okay. I started to work with large carnivores some 20 years ago, and it was in time when we just started to recognize Czech landscape. So we are the country where all carnivores were exterminated in the past, and we have to learn how to live with them again. So it was quite a good start, and for gradually get all the experience. So it was in the mid 90s when first wolves arrived to the West Carpathians from the main Carpathian countries like Slovakia or Poland, and then started to settle down. And of course, they started to make some damages of livestock, and it also caused quite tension among local people because they were afraid of wolves, and all these old stories emerge. So that time I was not working in Friends of the Earth, but my colleagues and from Friends of the Earth and other NGOs started the first education campaign by the end of the previous century, and it included, of course, some education activities in schools, discussion forum with villages, but also involving people, volunteers in large carnivore monitoring. And the main goal in that time was to prevent poaching, because some hunters, some local people that time was quite negative, expressed their negative opinion about large carnivores, and after years they admit they know about cases of poaching. So it was quite complicated time that time, and when we started this large carnivore monitoring project, the tracking project, the aim was mainly to deal with poaching. But now I'm presenting the current situation, and there are like three main pillars which we built on, and the main point currently is the involving volunteers for gathering the data. So citizen science initiative that starts from collection data from tracking, from camera traps. You can see quite old pictures here because at the time when we started, of course, the camera were a bit different, and this old data helped us a lot to produce some distribution maps, scientific articles. So thanks to this initiative, we have quite good overview of the conservation status of all large carnivores in the Czech Republic. The second quite important goal is to involve people, and because they learn from the experience, and it is important if they spend some time in the field, they don't afraid wolves so much if they only read the messages in newspapers on TV. So this direct experience is important for some informal education. At the same time, we get quite a lot of material for further work with local communities in local festivals, with children, pictures of camera traps. This is something which is always quite interesting for local people if they know that these pictures are from their forest. This is not some picture from internet downloaded somewhere. So I think this local context is important, and also if we discuss with some opponents like hunters, foresters, it's also good to show examples from our field experience from the forest. So this involving and promoting communication is quite important, and also the main goal in the beginning was to prevent the poaching. So if there are some people physical presence in the forest. They can get some evidences of poaching incidents, and also especially in the beginning when the project started, there are a lot of illegal baits found near the shooting stands. So we monitor this area. We send some complaints to the respective authorities, because that time this meat baits was illegal to dispose in the forest. So in the beginning, the work was quite intensive, but now we see the number of illegal baits or any baits in the forest is pretty low. So after the years of communication and dealing with authorities, we also believe the possibility of illegal killings is decreasing. And of course, the work with large carnivores is not only about monitoring, about encountering with the wildlife, but it's about wide range of activities, and also wildlife corridors are quite important to secure the connected population in the fragmented landscape. So what we also did, started with rewilding of some wildlife corridors, planting the forest patches, so-called stepping stones in the agriculture landscape. And we also involve local majors, local hunters that were quite interested, because this is something concrete, not only talking about carnivores and finding the coexistence, but also making some physical work in the landscape that can be beneficial also for other species, and also for water retention in the landscape and so on. So this planting started like 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, and now there are quite important stepping stones that can be used by many wildlife. So now, very shortly about how we work with the volunteers. We organize each year training workshops, 2-3 days workshop, where we try to involve local people, students, general public, everybody who is interested. In the map you can see the locations of our workshops that are taking place every year in different locations, about 5-6 workshops every year. And then during the mainly during the winter, but also later, we organize the joint mapping events with volunteers, which will meet in a forest cottage somewhere in the area of occurrence, and they commonly participate in the field monitoring, collect biological samples, and all the data or the work trails they save into our online database, which is then by us and by other experts used for validation of all this data. As you can see, the wolf population in the last 20 years increased quite substantially. So yeah, it's not only because of our project, but also thanks to the populations from Germany and Poland, so wolves that immigrated to our area, and we are happy that we were able to contribute to the mapping of this return of large carnivores and minimizing the conflict. So what is important, what is crucial according to us, is the tolerance of local people. And we had the possibility to compare what was the attitude of people in the West Carpathians like 10 years ago, where large carnivores just started to return in the Beskid Mountains over 10 years. And as you can see, the people positive attitude maintain over 12 years, and even they were more positive towards wolves, bears, and lynx like before, despite the fact the number of wolves increased, number of conflicts increased, and people also perceive this conflict as a real fact, but at the same time they started to be tolerant. So we think that this work with local people is quite important, and if we work from the beginning with the return, we believe this can mitigate all the conflicts. So what we have learned, that of course we are happy that large carnivores an attractive issue, this charismatic species, but at the same time the volunteers and people involved has to somehow understand that they will not see wolf every day. It is not a wolf sighting initiative, so it's a lot of hard work in cold and many field trips without finding anything, but still walking in the wild is somehow inspiring for many people. We have to admit that a few local people are really interested in this issue, but even if there are just few, they are quite important. They are possibly influential. They can be good opinion maker in villages, in their local communities, where they can share their experience. And all, despite the fact that we train many volunteers, only few are working in the field during the winter. So this can be also somehow pessimistic, but at the same time we believe that this is important to somehow transfer our knowledge to volunteers during the workshop, and they can work, if not in the field, in different fields, in their family, in their surroundings, and the spread what they learned to other people, which is also quite important. And the last comment is about camera trap, which is quite widespread tool for monitoring of wildlife, also used by hunters intensively, and it's excellent source of data about large carnivore presence. And of course, this is at the same time sensitive issues for some hunters, for some foresters. So it's good to communicate the issue before installing them or during the monitoring, and it's good to share the results. So it somehow build the trust between all the stakeholders when they know that we are not doing this activity to just to watch them, but for watching the wildlife and the carnivores. So thank you very much for your attention. If you are interested, you can also visit our website, carnivores.cz.
Great, thank you so much, Miroslav. And yeah, really interesting to hear about volunteering and citizen science to engage different groups through sort of really practical activities. Right, I am going to hand back over to Amy, who is going to chair the panel Q&A. Thanks for all the questions.
Thank you, Nancy. There have been so many questions in the Q&A. It's fantastic. We don't have a huge amount of time, so there are two that I really want to focus on that have been at the top for the last hour or so. One is about elevating young people as leaders of rewilding. I can say something very briefly, but I'd also like to invite the other panelists to think if they have a specific example that they'd like to share. Perhaps one of you has something nice we can reply. The other question is around compensation schemes. But in particular, how can we go ahead and incentivize people instead? Rather than responding and compensating for harm, how can we incentivize prevention measures and preparedness and tolerance instead? So to the first one, very quickly from my side, young people are really core to the work that Rewilding Europe does. We recognise that rewilding and restoration of nature is an intergenerational justice issue. It's the young people who are going to be experiencing the benefits or the disbenefits of whatever we do now. So we have, we're the conveners of the European European Young Rewilders. We're also connected to the UK Young Wilders Initiative. The question came from someone in the UK, so you might like to look them up. We also are connected to an initiative called Sylvester Rewilding. The question was also about land ownership and power imbalances, and Sylvester are particularly focusing on helping young people to access land for rewilding and address that power imbalance. So that might be of particular interest as well. We also always have a youth representative on the board of Rewilding Europe, specifically to make sure that that youth perspective is brought up to the highest level and we're held accountable to young people as well. Can I ask, is there a member of the panel who would also like to give a specific example from their work? Silence. Mario, did I see a nod?
No, I agree with you. I totally agree. I was trying to answer some comments, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And you have a strong young presence, I think, also in the Central Apennines through the volunteer program, as well as specific
Yes, we
workshops on
do
best
have a lot of
practices.
young people, but the thing is that in local communities there are not so many, and not easy to involve them in our work because sometimes they have different interests, different objectives, and so we try with our volunteers to engage with young people, local young people too. Some young people who join our efforts became staff members. They became, so I don't consider them, volunteers anymore because they became staff members. So what I can testify on is that sometimes you start from from scratches, as Miroslav said, and or Francesco. We all share, I think, this experience that we don't have money at the beginning. I see that now many comments are about how can you do that. Of course, but if you make an effort, if you put your heart in what you do, you look for grants to support what you want to achieve, and in the end, you can make it.
Thank you, Mario.
Yes, and many young people are attracted by this, and I'm very happy for that. But at the same time, the first question, how can I get a job? And it's not easy to find a job for everybody. That's reality.
Yeah, I would like just to confirm that these young people are important part of our work. If they are students, they are also interested in their thesis. So it is quite good if we can involve them. But at the same time, yeah, in 1 or 2 years, maybe less, they need to switch to other opportunities. And today there are many opportunities, not only about the large carnivores and wildlife. So we have to compete with different interests. And it also happens sometimes that people join us just after 10 years again. They just participate in the beginning, then they didn't have time because they found in the family or whatever, and they will return with their children. And it's also quite inspiring to see that they are still watching us during all these years, that they are silent. So we cannot be in contact with all people, but at least some of them can get us a feedback after years.
Thank you. The other question was around compensation schemes and what can we do to incentivize tolerance, coexistence, celebration of wildlife, sharing land, productive land with people. I'd suggest, I know my colleagues from Rewilding Portugal are here on the call, and I hope they can share some information, but they have a particularly nice example of a collaboration with Wildling Shoes, where the farmers who adopt prevention measures to protect the sheep from shoes could sell that wool for a premium price to make high quality shoes, which are then sold on the European market. So for me, that's a really nice example. And it would be fantastic if that type of model could be replicated to provide that incentive and that prevention measure rather than compensation. I don't know if anyone else here would like to contribute an example, a similar one.
Yeah, as I said before, I mean, we have this enterprise network. So many small businesses, local businesses recognize the importance of having bears, but not only bears. I mean, the wildlife of this area is a common heritage, and they contribute with their work sometimes, but even a fee to our work, and we invest this in prevention. That's sometimes, I mean, some people are a little bit against even prevention because building this electric fencing, I was actually trying to answer a comment about that. But we don't have so many alternatives. Very often, retaliatory killing is the end of exacerbated, I don't know how to say, conflicts. And so the system is not perfect, but we try to do our part. Also to reassure people, as Svetlana was saying, I mean, you have to make people trust you. And so these are the tools. And yes, I mean, there is a lot of effort in prevention, and these enterprises are helping. And if you are recognized as someone who does the job in the field in general, you know, people are keener to support you financially and even in kind.
Also, if I can add something about the compensation, here in Italy, Mario know very well, it's very hard to understand the way we are keeping on, because the management of the compensation are on a regional scales, and there are regions that give compensation also if you do not have any type of protection, and other regions are giving you compensation just only if you are protecting the livestock. And by our point of view, there are areas in Italy, especially in the Alpine area, that in some way they compensate also if you do not have something, and the livestock owner in some way decided to say, okay, leave the animals free without any means of protection. And naturally, this is not good. It's something that, from our point of view, the institution need to make better, especially when we are facing something like the wolf downgrading. On the other side, you need to work better for promoting the coexistence in some way, because from my point of view, you need to give prides to the livestock owner that protect, and in other ways, if you don't want to protect, is not very good from our point that you have still the compensation. So you, in some ways, you work a bit less. So it's hard. It's very hard from this point.
Yeah. I would like also to add that it was also shown by many studies that compensation is important for the farmers, but it is not helping with building tolerance towards carnivores. It's important to don't have the damages, the losses. This is the most important for building tolerance, and the support of preventive measures is essential in the mountainous areas or other areas, and not only the physical fence or support for dogs, but also extra work, which is somehow connected with good fencing, with the feeding of the livestock guarding dogs. And for example, Czech Republic now supports, Czech government supports the farmers that do the so-called minimum standards for livestock protection. So if they have fences that are at least with electricity 120 centimeters, the string with special parameters, the voltage, and so on, and or if they have livestock guarding dogs, they have right to have this donation to support for this work. And what we see from feedback from the farmers, it is quite important for them, and it can help decrease the damages quite a lot. Because at the same time, we see that some farmers who don't want to do nothing, they only receive compensation, but they will not change their fencing and other techniques for having livestock. So it is important to somehow motivate them to change the practice, even if we know it is not always easy.
Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry we don't have time for more questions. If I could encourage everyone in the panel to also look in the Q&A, there are some targeted directly to some of you, and it would be fantastic if we could provide a response before the end of this call. I'll hand back to Nancy now. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy, and thank you particularly, well, to all the speakers. It's been a really fascinating set of talks and really great insights into this topic. I'd also like to thank the audience. It's great to see there's so much interest, and thanks for all the interesting questions and all the discussion going on in the chat. Yeah, great to see this community kind of really galvanized. I guess just to sum up a little bit, it's been really nice to hear these different perspectives on the issue of how to live well with wildlife. And I think the really fundamental point that's come out from the different presentations is the importance of empowering people within the landscapes to be a part of this and to feel like it belongs to them, as Francesco said, and really interesting practical ideas of how to build this trust. And I think that's from working with different levels. So hearing from Svetlana about how the mayors and the municipalities have a role, really important role to play in navigating these relationships in a local context. And then sort of moving on to Mario, talking about the sort of having the bear smart communities and their governance and institutions, and then getting the real bottom up viewpoint from Francesco and Miroslav about how to really build those local relationships and really actively involve the people so that they actually become advocates for the project. And